With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. This is going to be fun. I haven't talked to him in a minute. Our friend Brady Leonard. When there's not a pandemic, he does things with guitars and sings and what such. In the meantime, he does great work on the No Gimmicks podcast, which is the greatest podcast name of all time, the No Gimmicks podcast. Make sure you check that out. We're going to talk to him today as an Ohioan, and we're going to talk a little politics in Ohio. Brady, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great, my friend. Thanks for having me.
How's the hunting and fishing going?
Well, it's February, so that's the no hunting, no fishing month. It's
that would be the joke.
Yep. And it's funny, man. My wife is already getting annoyed with me. She's like, I'm looking forward, and she tried to put it diplomatically. She was like, when you getting up at 4 a.m. and leaving, all morning to hunt and fish, I kind of miss you doing that because I'll work out, I'll get an early morning, I'll get a good start to my day, and now you're just always here, so you're distracting me. I'm like, hey, the walleye run's starting, probably in the next week or two, so I'll be back out there.
Good deal. That's probably more pleasant than what we're going to talk to you about today. We have a midterm election coming up. We're also keeping an eye on the 2024 election over yonder horizon. Ohio is going to be one of them states that a lot of people are paying attention to. It's interesting, though, because the Ohio Senate primary for the GOP has really turned into kind of a case study on a lot of different things going on. Is it as big as a cluster dumpster fire from there as it looks in the national media? Are they misportraying it, or is this really a race to the bottom of a bunch of people that all sound the same?
Well, it's funny. Ohio has a lot of talented Republicans. Ohio's kind of known. The Ohio GOP is a really strong state party, and they're known for having a deep bench. That's not necessarily what we're seeing this time. I'm certainly not happy with the slate of candidates we've got right now. And it's funny, like I'm looking forward to more polling data coming out. There hasn't been as much so far as I thought. The latest major poll was the Trafalgar poll from, I believe it was the 9th or the 10th of this month. It showed Mandel up, I think, 5 points over Mike Gibbons, with Vance and Timken behind. Another poll that same week I think it was Quinnipiac, not sure. You can fact check me on that, but it had Gibbons up by a couple points. And then Gibbons internals had him up big, but take internal polling with a grain of salt. But I'm looking for it's tough to tell kind of where the race is at right now. I'm personally rooting for Gibbons, but I'm looking forward to seeing some more polling data. I have to imagine the next few weeks we'll start seeing more.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's just start with him since you brought him up. The other three folks have been getting more attention. Timken was kind of the early person for some of the establishment folks. J.D. Vance is probably the most known nationally. Of course, Mandel's on his third shot at a Senate. But we were talking a couple of weeks ago. I don't want to talk out of school here, but you were the one that told me weeks and weeks ago, like, hey, pay attention to Gibbons. With all the rest of this mess and the way this is just kind of turned into a clown show among those other three candidates, Gibbons is kind of getting traction by just being a normal Catholic Ohio dude talking about normal Catholic Ohio things.
Yeah, I mean, he's running a really good campaign, and he is campaigning as the normal human being. He's a wealthy businessman. He's running as the political outsider. He's Catholic, large Catholic population in Ohio. Obviously, he coaches youth football. He's coached football his whole life. There's a few football fans in the state, and so I kind of saw right away that in nowadays, when the entire world's gone crazy, that if you run as a normal person, that's going to resonate to a lot of people. And every other candidate, and we'll get more into this in a second, I'm sure, but every other candidate's making the entire thing about Donald Trump. It's like every other word out of their mouth is about Trump. And Gibbons, he will throw like a pro-Trump thing into his ads. I'm tough, just like Donald Trump. I think he has like a consultant that told him he has to do that for some reason. But the other candidates, it's like they're running to take Donald Trump to prom. You know what I mean? They're not running to represent Ohio in the U.S. Senate. So, and Gibbons on the campaign trail, all his stump speeches, he's not going hard on the Trump stuff. He's not He's not playing that whole game. He's just being himself. And he's the only candidate to me who's concerned with, introducing Ohioans to him as a person, not just, hey, look at me, look how pro-Trump I am.
Yeah, talking to Brady Leonard, host of the No Gimmick podcast, and a proud Ohioan. Let's talk about that, though, because it's very interesting to me. One of the reasons they're spending so much time trying to out-Trump each other is because Trump hasn't done an endorsement yet. This really strikes me as odd, though, because he endorsed in the North Carolina Senate really early. He jumped on Ted Budd, which kind of shocked everybody. He's endorsed in Georgia. He has rallied in Ohio recently. He's endorsed in the House races. The opponent for Anthony Gonzalez, of course, that's personal because he voted for impeachment. Why hasn't he gotten into this? This seems really strange. Or do you think he's just enjoying the feeding frenzy, or is Ohio just not on his radar as much as maybe Georgia or one of these other states? What do you think it is that's keeping him out?
I have to imagine he's enjoying the feeding frenzy. I mean, come on. No, I've never met Donald Trump, Andrew, but from what we know, we both know about the man. I have to imagine he's enjoying the sycophantic love affair that these candidates are lavishing on him. Particularly the guy who was known as the front runner this whole time, Josh Mandel, has made his entire and you probably remember this from his previous runs, but he was this like his whole political identity was, I'm this combat veteran, this young guy, conservative. He was kind of like he was running to be like a Tom Cotton, you know what I mean? Somebody along those lines. And then he changes his entire personality and public persona and makes it all about Donald Trump. And it's so strange. I mean, maybe Trump was even, as much as Trump loves people saying nice things about him, maybe he even thought that was a little cringeworthy.
Yeah, I remember.
Probably not, but
there was a joke. I forget who said it online or I'd cite it, but there was a joke about the old, and now this is the old Josh Mandel, not the current version, that he was a stereotypical National Review intern, but without all the pizzazz. That was kind of the book on him. That man has gone hardcore, Donald Trump. Now, he's had a couple of interesting things happen. He dropped out of his last race for really ambiguous reasons. He talked about, family issues, things like that. He went through a divorce. I'm not going to get into that. People want to talk about it, they can, but people's divorces and stuff, especially when it involves kids, I'd rather just leave that alone.
Not my business.
Yeah, not my business. I'll leave that for what it is. But when he came back this time, it's all culture war stuff to the point of absurdity. Remember him swearing he was never going to take his Cleveland Indian hat off, which we haven't seen since. I'll just throw that out there. What happened to this guy? Is this an audience capture thing where that's his one way to get there? This is his third try at the Senate seat. Is this desperation? Did Trump just break him? Is he out of options? He's a young guy. I think he's 41, 42, something like this.
If that, yeah.
This is quite the transformation. Is there any explanation for it?
Yeah, it's got to be just desperation. He was gonna win. He was gonna beat Sherrod Brown. He was up 5 points or so, even in a tough year for Republicans. But yeah, and then he did drop out due to personal issues. He's, like you mentioned, we don't need to get into that here, but I will say this: he's somebody that I couldn't vote for personally because of those personal issues. But that's just my own personal convictions. But yeah, I don't know. But I don't know why. I guess desperation, but just the audience knows, if you're not familiar with Ohio politics, like that would be his bizarre change of worldviews and personalities would be as extreme as if like Tom Cotton or James Lankford or one of these like middle of the road kind of establishment type Republicans just went into his closet, walked out with orange skin and a toupee and started talking about the southern border all the time. I mean, it's like, it's just a 180 degree change from everything he's talked about. And he's been in, Ohio politics since he was like in his late 20s, I think, maybe 30-ish. It's been a decade at least.
I was going to say, wasn't he like state treasurer when he was like the youngest state treasurer or something? He was he
29 or 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He was a wonder kid, and now I guess he's having a midlife crisis. Now it's just bizarre, even by Trump standards, and the way he breaks people left and right, for and against. The man just tends to break people. Even by that standard, this has just been bizarre to watch.
The thing is, and J.D. Vance, I'll throw into that same category. Those two gentlemen have fallen into, and this is my personal theory, that they've fallen into the trap that people on both sides fall into this trap. You see it a lot more with Democrats. You're seeing it right now a lot with the messaging of the Biden administration. It looks like they're trying to govern for like their base on Twitter. You know what I mean? It'll be like a lot of culture war stuff and orange man bad stuff and highlighting like transgender rights issues all the time. And normal people are like, hey, I'm paying $5 a gallon for gas. I can't afford meat and, you know, all this. And it's like, I think that's the trap that JD Vance and Josh Mandel have fallen into. It's all like the Trumpy stuff. It's like build the wall in Arizona and break up Amazon and all of this stuff. And it's like, that is just not, I mean, I'm not even talking for or against securing the border or big tech or any, that's a debate for another day, but like, these are not issues that are on the minds of most Ohioans. Like illegal immigration is not an issue that matters to 99% of Ohio voters. And honestly, and I'm sorry to say this, if you've been to Ohio, you know, the people that are most passionate about illegal immigration are the farmers that need illegal immigrants to harvest their crops every fall. Okay. So it's like, that is just not an issue that's going to persuade a lot of Ohioans. And it's like they're playing to like the conservative Twitter base, not the actual voter base in the state that they're trying to win.
Yeah, and the reason for that is fundraising. We know that. We're talking to Brady Leonard. Yeah. When we come back on Heard Tell, we're going to get into the well-documented on this program, because y'all know how I feel about him, JD Vance. Going to talk a little bit more about why Ohio is such a paid attention to. Bellwether's overused, but Ohio really is in a lot of cases. We're going to talk more with that. Ohio Politics with Brady Leonard of the No Gimmicks podcast right after this. Welcome back to Heard Tell, talking some Ohio politics with our buddy Brady Leonard. It's been way too long. Appreciate you being with us today, buddy. You brought him up, so we have to talk about him, because I don't like talking about him because I prefer to just pretend he doesn't exist. But J.D. Vance is running for Senate. It is an interesting case study, though, because he probably has the highest national name recognition because of that stupid book he wrote and because of his plugged-inness, because we famously know that Peter Thiel gave him $10 million to go run for Senate in Ohio.
Really?
But
he gave him 10 million, huh?
Yeah, go figure. But you know, let's rail against big tech. Okay. Another discussion for another day, but this has not gone well for the erstwhile defender of all things Appalachia, has it?
No, man, Peter Thiel, God bless him. He's been burning through a lot of money, man. I don't know why you and I don't see any of it. Like, if he wants to waste some cash, man, I can think of.
People keep telling me I'm a shill for this, that, and the other, and I'm like, dude, I will queue up in the line for the money. That VA check only goes so far, but I never see any of it.
I'm a libertarian. I've been waiting on my Koch brothers money my entire life, man. It just hasn't shown up yet. It got lost in the mail, I believe. But yeah, I like you said, he's playing for the fundraisers. See, if I didn't know I knew he got millions from big donors. I didn't know it was 10 million. I don't know why he's so desperate to campaign for the fundraisers then, but juxtapose that with Gibbons, who is a self-made man. And I believe he wrote himself a check for 12 million. I don't even know if the guy's fundraising. I think he's worth, if not 9 figures, somewhere close to there. So he doesn't need to play that game. But yeah, I mean, Vance, in all polling I've seen is never made it above third, behind Mandel and Gibbons. His ads are bad. It's a bizarre turn too, because he did make all these comments that the Trump people hate, you know, calling Trump an idiot and all that in 2016. And now he's backtracking, saying how much he loves Trump and all that. And it's like, man, he's not fighting. He's giving his opponents ammo. He's campaigning and raising money out of the state. He's flip-flopping on Trump and everything else. He's not talking about issues that really matter to Ohioans. And it's like, it's a bizarre campaign. I don't know who's running the campaign, but nobody too intelligent from where I'm sitting. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've never read the book. I never saw the TV show. I see your disdain for the man, and maybe that has pushed me against ever reading too much into him. But he's not a candidate that I take too seriously. I don't think he really has too much of a chance. And honestly, I have to say, I do live in a major media market in Toledo, in Ohio. I mean, as far as Ohio goes, I'm a major media market. And the Vance ads have not been around very much. People have been saying he might even be running out of money, which is fascinating. He burned through 10 million already, but yeah, I don't think his ads have been effective. He hasn't really jumped up ever in the polling. And Timken too. I don't think she has too much of a chance. I really think it is going to come down to Josh Mandel or Mike Gibbons.
I'll tell you where that money goes, because about let's see, back 1st of February, Politico got their hands on this internal PowerPoint slide deck from the Vance campaign of everything that was going wrong. It's a 98-page PowerPoint presentation. Let me tell you something. I'm a professional writer. I ain't doing a 98-page slide. I don't think I've ever done a 98-page slide deck for anything ever in my life, because about 10 or 12 and I'm done. And now a 12 slide deck, that's an hour right there. Obviously, there's a lot of overhead to his campaign if you've got internal people doing crap like this. However, that 98-page PowerPoint that was leaked had some really dire numbers that he is just not getting any traction at all. When he does wade into the culture war stuff, he's really bad at it. Last week, he took a run at Barry Caffrey, of all people, calling him a cocktail general. And so, like, listen, we have some of those. Barry Caffrey is not one of them. He has 3 Purple Hearts, a Distinguished Service Cross. 2 of his kids served. His grandkids are serving now. That's not the guy to take a run at that. That's the leader of the famous left hook in Desert Storm, one of the great military maneuvers of all. Like, dude, can you not Google somebody before you go shooting off? Like, he's just tone deaf bad at some of this culture warring stuff. And him and Mandel have the same problem. Is it's like it's almost like they're speaking a second or third language, and all the jokes have the wrong high points when they try to do this, isn't it? Because it just all lands cringe, doesn't it?
Yeah, Vance especially, it seems like he does speak conservative or Republican as a second language. And you saw it, and it was a pretty nasty comment about the Russian invasion of Ukraine the other day, where JD Vance, he doesn't quite get it. He doesn't get how to, he thinks he's espousing these positions that conservatives agree with when he's really not. And so when the Russians moved into Ukraine, he tweets something or puts out a statement I'm paraphrasing here, but it was along the lines of LOL, who cares about Ukraine? Let's worry about the southern border, or something like that. And it's like, all right, hey man, I'm as anti-war as it gets. I'm a pretty radical libertarian personally, but what do you mean? You sound like a sociopath. You're saying you do not care what happens to Ukrainian women and children, because that is something a sociopath would say. You should at least be praying for peace in Ukraine. And that's, obviously I would never advocate for sending American men and women over there, but you can be against military action and still pray for peace. You can still I care about Ukrainians because I'm not a psychopath. And so, like, he puts out these Twitter takes on letterheads, you know what I mean? And it just rings flat, man. Especially Ohio has a massive Ukrainian population too, and that's not going to help them, especially in Eastern Ohio. But yeah, he just swings and misses at every single one of these issues, it seems like.
Yeah, that's the first thing that hit me. I'm like, I got family up around Youngstown. I'm like, there's a lot of Ukrainians in Northern Ohio. What do you like? Just politically, that's a really and the other thing is a lot of European descendants. They tend to have a little bit of solidarity as immigrants. Like, the Czech folks, the Polish folks. That stuff lands hard when you start going after somebody like that. They're just not going to like that sort of thing.
No. I mean, Toledo is a massive Polish population. They're not going to like that at all. It's like it's all Twitter, man. I mean, this is the day and age we're in, and it's not just these guys, and it's not just the left or the right. They all get trapped into playing for their Twitter followers. I mean, anytime there's a presidential primary, you saw it with the Republicans in 2016, the Democrats in 2020. It's like every debate, it's like they're trying to win with these Twitter takes that just land flat. It's like, guys, you're campaigning in Iowa. You know what I mean? You just can't do like the Green New Deal stuff, or like you're campaigning in Ohio. You can't say you don't care what happens to Ukrainian civilians. It's like it's so bizarre. And it's Ohio, man. It's a funny state. Like they don't necessarily go along with the trends in each party. Especially the Republicans. Like they don't, like Mike DeWine's the governor. He's not a traditional Republican in terms of what you would consider a traditional Republican in 2022. A more like, populist or libertarian or, Trumpy. Like he's none of those things. He's like an old school guy, Senator Portman, an old school 90s Republican kind of guy. It's like Ohioans, they don't go along with the national trends in terms of where each party is headed all the time. And I think, I think JD Vance, he's really running into that buzzsaw head first right now.
Yeah, and Brady Leonard we're talking to. Kind of to wrap this up and bring it back to Ohio. One of the most interesting things, and I'm a little biased because I've got family in Youngstown. That's the Donaldsons that spell the name wrong because they stayed Irish Catholic. That's another debate for another day. We're kidding. We love y'all, all y'all up around, all y'all along Mahoning Avenue down there in Austintown. We love you. But somewhere like Mahoning County, Youngstown, economically devastated. One of the biggest swing counties from Bush to Obama to Trump back to Biden. That goes exactly what you're saying is these are engaged voters, as in they don't just show up and punch the ticket. Whatever's happening affects how they go to the polls. And that's why Ohio is such a must-watch state election after election, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think that is why a guy with, I think Gibbons started this race with something like 5% name recognition. He ran briefly. Was it 2 or 4 years ago? I can't remember, but he dropped out. He never got any traction. But he's talking about jobs. He's talking about the economy. He's talking about, Biden's failings economically. He's talking about, bringing, factories back and all that. And he's talking about the COVID stuff and how, Fauci's no good and all that. Yeah. I mean, that's what you're worried about if you're an Ohioan, the COVID-19 stuff. If you're a Republican, you're probably worried about the government overreach regarding COVID-19. You're worried about your job. You're worried about the factories closing and all of that. And it's like, that's why you and I both, I think, tend to root for the good guy. And I think in terms of the quality of human beings in this race, I'd say that Gibbons would qualify as that. But yeah, everybody else just seems tone deaf when there are glaring issues. It's so funny to me too, just going back to both Mandel and Vance. It's like, man, it's a great time to run for office as a Republican. I mean, Joe Biden's approval ratings is in the low 40s, high 30s. Direction of the country is in like the teens, low 20s. I mean, there's a lot of issues you can talk about, and they're not. I mean, most of these candidates just aren't. So it's bizarre. I mean, it seems like if I were running these gentlemen's campaigns, it doesn't seem hard to steer a candidate into issues that would be very favorable for them.
Brady Leonard, you do good work, sir. You were one of the first podcasts I ever went on, so I'll publicly thank you because you gave me the rare endorsement of like, hey, I don't tell people to go do a podcast, but you need to go do a podcast. So thank you for that blessing and curse.
You're one of 2 people I've ever said that to, my friend.
So how are we doing? We doing okay with it?
Absolutely.
You do good work. Let people know where they can find the No Gimmicks podcast, the other stuff you do. You do a spot of writing from time to time, and you've been known to strum a guitar and at least chord the thing from time to time. Let folks know what you got going on, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. You follow me on Twitter at Brady Leonard. And check out my band. We're called Southbound Fearing, wherever you get your music. Subscribe to my podcast, the No Gimmicks Podcast, 1 p.m. every Monday and Wednesday, wherever podcasts are found, iTunes, Spotify, wherever. I also write for the Catalyst over at Independent Institute from time to time. So check them out as well.
Yep. And the No Gimmicks is actually from his band name. It's just good old fashioned, straightforward rock and roll, good stuff. I've listened to it. Highly recommend it if you can find it. Brady Leonard, thank you for your time, sir. We will definitely do this again. We're not going to wait 2 years to get together again next time. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks, buddy.